Please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome everybody for the August 17th meeting. Got a lot going on in the town of Elkton, trying to catch up. Gene and I was just talking about maybe we have to have a couple of extra meeting dates just to catch up. And really, you know, before we get into that, we may have to. I mean, we've got the handbook we haven't even really got to discuss all that much. We've got the codes that we haven't really discussed all that much. And there's just doesn't seem to be enough hours in the day. And when you have these meetings, you want to keep the attention span of everybody up there. So you're going to have probably multiple meetings with, and we just have 15-minute meetings every day.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, do we have approval of the minutes of June 20th? So second. Got a motion, a second, any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. What did I say, June? Minutes of July 20th. Sorry about that. Financial report and payment of bills. We have a motion? Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the financial? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have Miss Jennifer Dickerson or Dickerson?
Dickerson.
Come on down. And I guess we'll have Joe Mason on line, or you're by yourself?
It's going to be myself today.
Perfect.
He had a family medical issue, unfortunately.
And Jennifer's with Davenport and Company, and this is a discussion overview of what exactly the bond rating process is. Thank you so much for being here, because we want to understand this a little bit better.
Well, thank you for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. As the mayor mentioned, here just to talk about, the financing and credit rating process. Just quickly a little bit about my background. I work for Davenport and Company. We are currently assisting the town as financial advisor on the Southfield project. I've been with Davenport for about 6 years now. Prior to that, I actually worked with a rating agency. And then my colleague who couldn't be here today, he has worked with Davenport for about 16 years and also has a rating agency background as well. From talking to the town administrator, it looks like Sideline Properties has asked the town of Elkton to support the development of a sports park. And so you all are considering an issuance of bonds to provide financial support for the sports park. Prior to issuing bonds in the public market, you have to obtain a credit rating, and the credit ratings are really assigned to indicate to potential investors that would buy the town's bonds, the likelihood that the town would default on those bonds. The higher the credit rating assigned, the less risk or likelihood of default there is. So I'm just going to go through a few slides to give you an idea of what, issuing bonds looks like and some things to consider, as well as the credit rating process itself. So on this side, we just have a flow chart. And there's sort of four main, in addition to the town itself, there's four main parties that are involved in, issuing bonds. You have your financial advisor, and then you have bond counsel. I know you all work with Whiteford Taylor Preston, Kimberly Min, so she would be involved in that process. You also have underwriters. I know you all have a relationship with Mesero Christian, that would, we could talk about that. So they could potentially act as underwriter for these bonds. And then you have the rating agencies who are going to assign the credit rating, which we just talked about, which will signal to potential investors, what the credit, what your credit rating would be. So at the beginning of the process, the town would work with a financial advisor like Davenport to analyze your different options. So you look at, how much are you looking to issue for this project? how do you, what type of sale are you looking at? What is the security on those bonds? So trying to make sure that you all can afford to pay for the debt service related to these bonds. In addition, we work with bond counsel to make sure that we met any legislative requirements related to the bonds. There are two primary documents, and I'll give some more detail later. There's a document called the preliminary official statement, and then a credit rating presentation that would need to be put together. And then once those have been assembled, then you go for the credit ratings. The credit ratings would be assigned, and then at that point, you could go into the market and sell the bonds. And then when the bonds usually close about 2 weeks after the sale, and you have the funds in hand to pay for the sports park. In terms of the type of sale, there's two different types of public sales. There's what's called a competitive public sale, where underwriters compete against each other in a sealed bid process. And this is generally provides the best results if you're an established, highly rated credit. There's also a negotiated sale, and this is where you select an underwriter, either based on a relationship, like you have a relationship with Mesro, or you can do an RFP process to select an underwriter. And there's different reasons to do that, and we've listed them here. But since you would be a new credit, considering a negotiated sale and choosing an underwriter would probably be something to consider if you were going into the public market. Given that you would be a new credit, that underwriter could specifically target marketing to specific investors, and it would allow for more of them to tell a story versus just through a sealed bid process. There's two types, or there's a few types of different securities that could secure the bonds. Now, the security pledge is really just the primary revenue source that is going to support the debt service on the bonds. The stronger and more reliable the security on those bonds, the greater and likelihood that a higher credit rating could be assigned. And the higher the credit rating, the lower the interest rate. So three different options: general obligation bonds. So this would be a general obligation pledge of the town itself. So you would pledge your unlimited ad valorem taxing power. And so you would pledge that you would raise property taxes if needed to cover any debt service on the bonds. And this is one of the strongest securities, and it's actually the most common pledge that is used within Maryland local governments. For the sports park, you could also look at revenue bonds. So that would be secured by the revenues generated by the sports park. However, these are not typically rated as high as general obligation bonds, and would likely not secure what we call an investment grade rating, just because the sports park hasn't been built yet. So there's no history of revenues that at this point that could support that debt service. And given that it's a sports park, there's more likelihood that those revenue streams could be more volatile than, the town's property tax. So that would be things to sort of consider. There's also double barrel bonds, so you could combine the two. So ultimately, the bonds could be secured by the general obligation pledge, but the thought would be that once those sports related revenues come in, that those would be sort of a first source to put forward towards that debt service. So you sort of have these two, but you still have the strength from the general obligation pledge, and that would produce the highest credit rating. The one thing I would say is that if you did those double barrel bonds, it would still be very important from a credit rating standpoint and just from a financial standpoint that the town budget for the debt service, because just in case the sports revenues don't come in as expected, you want to make sure that you have that in your budget and be able to cover that in case the sports revenues wouldn't be able to cover the debt service. And then, as I sort of mentioned before, there's two primary documents needed. One is called a preliminary official statement, and it's an informational document. It's information about the town's tax base, tax rates, size of the tax base, wealth levels, also financials. So usually it has a 5-year history of your financials, reserves, policies, and then also a debt overview, what debt do you have outstanding? What debt do you anticipate issuing aside from the potential sports part of the debt? As financial advisor, Davenport would take the lead. We'd put together a template. We'd fill out as much as we could in this document, but we would obviously need input from the town, to put this together. That would ultimately be posted for investors to look at, and that's what investors would use to gauge whether or not they want to purchase these bonds. Then there's a credit rating presentation. So before bond sale, you go to the credit rating agencies, and the credit rating presentation is a chance for the town to tell your story. So not just sort of, data like the preliminary official statement. You can tell a story about what's going on with your tax base, talk about, your finances. It allows you to give more, information about what's going on in the town, where you've been and where you're going. And so we would also take, the lead on drafting this credit presentation. We assemble a draft and then work with the town to gather additional information. Usually on the economic development side, we obviously need the town's help putting that together, getting some pictures of various items that you want to highlight. But as I mentioned, both my colleague Joe Mason and I both have rating agency backgrounds. So we make sure that the credit presentation is sort of geared to the information that credit rating agencies need. And just sort of moving to the credit rating process itself, there are three main credit rating agencies. There's Fitch, which Joe used to work for, Moody's, I used to work for, and then S&P Global. And as I mentioned, it's really, the credit rating really measures the willingness and ability for the town to pay its debt in time and in full. And you can see that we put all of the investment grade ratings over here on the right hand side, with AAA being the top tier, all the way down to BAA category. And we do believe that the town would be able to obtain an investment grade rating. We think that it could be at least in the high A category, so in that third tier, the strong category, and potentially even in that AA very strong category. Just to give you an idea, city and town ratings in Maryland typically range from A2 to AAA, depending on the credit rating metrics of the city and town, and Cecil County itself is rated AA2. And then this is just the credit rating process. So once we have sort of all of the financing details that we talked about, we would reach out to the credit rating agencies. We determine whether we go to one or two. I don't think we need to go to three of them. And we would ask them to assign, since it's a first rating, we would ask them to assign a private rating first. So that means it's not issued to the public. So let's say we went to two different agencies. We'd see who gave us a higher rating potentially, and then we take that rating public. But we put together the information, the POS and the credit presentation. We'd send that to them, and then we have a rating call, and we go through the credit presentation, tell the story, and they might ask questions. They might have follow-up questions, and it would be a conversation. Then they would take all of the information that we provided them, they'd go back and they would present that information to what's called a rating committee. And a rating committee is made up of senior analysts at the rating agency, all with various backgrounds, some in Maryland, some outside, to bring different viewpoints, and they would determine a rating. And after that has concluded, they would tell us what the rating is, and they would also provide us with a draft report. And the draft report would really just sort of highlight the main aspects that they talked about in committee, focusing on, tax base, finances, debt, and management. Those are really the four main factors that they focus on. And then you'd have a chance to review that and make sure there's no factual inaccuracies. And then that rating would be released to investors, the rating and the report. And you can see here, they all have slightly different methodologies. Moody's and S&P particularly have been more transparent in their rating process. They've established what they call rating scorecards. So it's easier to determine where your rating might come out because they've clearly laid out what the metrics they're looking at. There's still a subjective standpoint there that goes into the final rating. The rating on the scorecard doesn't necessarily have to match the rating assigned. Fitch does not have a scorecard. Its primary focus is just on budgetary flexibility. They've all been updated recently, and Moody's is actually looking to update theirs again. And so Moody's is the most transparent. They also have a database where they house all of their data, so it's easy to sort of track that once you get a rating. This is the financial metrics that they look at in their credit assessment. And as I said, it focuses on economy, financial metrics. Institutional precedent is kind of like management, and then leverage. And they break down into some sub factors here. But turning the page, if we go to page 13, we basically took the audited financial statements of the town and did sort of a back of the hand calculation of where you all might come out on this scorecard. And you can see, and this is a proposed scorecard under their new methodology, so it's subject to change. But you can see on the table on the right that the town ranks within the top 3 rating tiers for each of the respective inputs. This doesn't include any financial impact of debt that you would issue for the sports park, so that's not included in these numbers. But in addition to these metrics, there's also some additional notching factors that they have in consideration, but that sort of speaks to the subjective part that I talked about. So whatever the final scorecard comes out to doesn't necessarily have to match the final rating. But as I said, we think that based off of these inputs, that the town could at least get a high A rating, possibly in the AA category. And then I just put a proposed timeline. It usually takes about 3 to 4 months, from start to finish for a new credit. And that's putting together the POS, the credit presentation, having those calls with the rating agencies, and then ultimately going to market. So, this is flexible. This is just sort of for, discussion purposes, but just wanted to put that out there as well, just in case you have any questions. But I think that was all I had in terms of my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Jennifer, there's certainly a lot here, and I guess what my question is, I'm seeing everything in here that would determine the town's rating.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it's a pretty good process, right? We get rated.
Mm-hmm.
Who's looking at the sportsplex to make sure it's a project that's worthwhile? Because as I said to you when we first came in today, got to meet Jennifer for a few seconds before the meeting, is that I have a passion for this project. I've had a passion for 8 years, and sometimes when you're so passionate about projects, you may tend to look at things with blinkers on or fogginess in the eyes. And I just want to make sure that the project
Mm-hmm.
is solid.
Yeah.
What happens? How do we know that?
I don't know if you've explored doing sort of like a market study to see,
That's been done. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that would be the primary sort of.
So what can we ask them to provide to us before we start selling the bonds per se? Is that something that we should be at? I mean, we've seen it.
Yeah.
And it looks pretty good to me, but should we have a third party review these?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I think, looking at that market study, if you say that the results have been positive, I think that is good, looking at what you might issue and what that debt service also looks like, because as we talked about, ultimately having that general obligation pledge is going to be important. So having an idea of what your debt service might look like and what you might have to build into a budget that also will be important from a financial standpoint, because you want to make sure that you have the financial capacity to do that. And that's something we can certainly help with. But, you know, in terms of the market study, you know, I don't know if you know, Community Cap sometimes helps with these type of projects. I know they're working on the general Southfields development. They might be one to opine on that. But yeah, I think those are sort of the main factors I would look at.
Very good. So just thinking of the process, that should be going on kind of simultaneously to us moving forward, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think determining that you want to move forward with the project, figuring out what amount you're looking at, and then we can run some numbers and figure out, you know, from your financial standpoint, what does that look like from a debt service, and can you afford that in your budget? You know, is that easily digestible? Is that something where, you know, a tax rate increase might be needed? You know, that's something we can sort of flesh out once you have a better idea of what you're looking for from a, you know, a number standpoint.
Very good. Anyone else have anything?
I had a comment when I was looking at your rating factors. That when you brought that up by the economic, financial performance. I was looking in there. One key thing that I would think that would really bring value to this is the location.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that on there because the location between Philadelphia and Baltimore, that would be something that would hold the value weight to me and capture my attention is where else do we have this facility or this project? And that to me would be a great thing to have into this weight factor.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And that's something that they consider when they consider, you know, other considerations that's outside of the scorecard. So where you're located, that's something that we would highlight both in the preliminary official statement and the credit presentation. Because, you know, as you mentioned, Commissioner, you know, your location is key. Especially with all of these developments going on here. So that is something they do take into account. It might not necessarily be a metric on their scorecard, but it's something that will be included in their own.
Yeah. Shown to other investors.
Correct.
Okay.
Early on.
The third-party study, would that have a positive effect on our rating?
The fact that you did a market study and you looked at this project, yes, I think that would bode well. It shows that you were proactive. You didn't just go into, you know, wanting to fund this project without any sort of information. And the fact that, you know, it's a third party, it's not like not that the report was done internally. I think that bodes well.
Because we wouldn't do anything we can to get that rating higher.
Correct. Yep.
And location would come into that as well, right?
Location is, yep. Location will definitely.
I think the one thing that I saw in the scorecard, and you know, I applaud our staff for getting a lot of those 3 A's in that little scorecard that you showed me. I mean, that's wonderful. The one thing that we have no control over currently today is our income of our town, right?
Yeah.
And that draws us down, as you can see there, the residential income, which is 30% of the weight of this bond, puts us in a single A. And this is where these things help.
Yeah.
We're going to create jobs. It's going to really bring the income of folks up or give them an opportunity to earn some more money. But I'm going to ask Mike, can I ask you a question if you could?
Please.
I know early on you provided to us a feasibility study. And I know during our discussions, you talked about doing a third party.
Correct.
Where do we stand if you could provide that to the board?
Sure. So Chris Sheehan, following his presentation, provided a few names to us of people that do the third party studies that are also security backed studies. So that it's totally objective and it's separate from the town and from us. But more importantly, this is a national firm that does this all the time, and they've done it for lots of different jurisdictions, and they have some proven understanding of these type of projects. We've got their proposal, and we're prepared to execute that, move forward in parallel with what the town's doing. And also, just as a side note to that, on top of what you're doing as a part of the sports park, but also for the TIF as a property owner and as a taxpayer, I applaud the town for going forward as much for the TIF as it is for the sports park to be rated, because as far as I know, that's the only town in the county that has been able to do so.
Thank you. Lou, you have any comments?
No.
Or Steve?
No.
John?
Education, it's the process.
Yeah, board. No more.
This was very good.
How do we move forward with Davenport?
If you are interested in moving forward with the issuance, I think starting conversations about, what the, the amount was looking like, and then we can put together some, affordability presentation just to show you what debt service might look like on that. We can come back to you with that information. I think that would be a good start. That way you can have an idea of what that looks like for the amount that you're considering.
I think that we need to see that.
Yeah.
Right. So, I guess what we'll do is get you the information from them, or I'll put you guys in contact with each other.
Sounds perfect.
And let's
Yeah.
work that and see where to look, because I know that initially, when they were looking at this project as the Taj Mahal, it was a $40 or $50 million project. And as much as I want that, we may not want to go down that road, right? And we might have to cut some things back. So I'd like to see those numbers also, because I really don't know what they are either. So I would say, does the board tentatively feel good about it?
Yeah, I'd like to push forward with this. Numbers.
I do.
So I'd say let's get those numbers working as a team here, and then you'll have something that we can execute at our next meeting.
Okay.
Okay,
Sounds perfect.
thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very clear.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, next up, we have a discussion with the annexation query. Is Jean Benner? I see she's on the Zoom meeting.
I can come in if you like.
Jean, can you give us an update on this so I think we can hear you, maybe?
I'll come in.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Have her come in.
So in the meantime, let's see, and we'll hold off on Lou for a second. Did you order that already? You guys will have to take the action. It's the first meeting on the house.
First meeting and.
Sets down. I could do it via Zoom, I guess. The pina colada. I'm just going down to Dewey for a week with the kids. Come on down, Gina, if you can explain exactly what we got going on here. Okay, so we have a discussion regarding the property owned by Riverio III, identified as tax map 27D parcel 0074, consisting of 64.52 acres located east of Blue Ball Road and south of Dogwood Road. Louis Romano, I'm assuming he's in the room. All right, so you want to tell us a little bit, or we just want them to explain what they're asking?
Mr. Armino to come up and explain. He's been interested in annexing a tract of land essentially bounded by Dogwood Road and Blue Ball Road for a number of years.
Okay,
And so.
come on down and talk to us a little bit if you wouldn't mind.
Where's the property and up against where Columbus, I mean, where you are? It's on the other side of the creek, so it's at the Dogwood Road and
Blue ball.
Blue Ball, by the Triumph Industrial Park.
Does
It's
it touch
just
down?
south of the recycling, metal recycling place.
Mhm.
Triumph Industrial Park would be on the west boundary across Blue Ball Road. It's north of the creek, north of the Dwyer property. I can bring them back.
This is.
Dogwood and Blue Wall. Right there. It's a large tract of land. There's a number of parcels associated.
No, where did you?
Does it-
Corporate.
Oh, I'm sorry, the creek that runs through there, I believe it's a Birch Creek.
Dogwood Run.
Velvet Run. It's just north and west. It's north of the Dwyer property and west of the property owned by Kenny Simmons Vantage Point.
Okay.
All righty, tell us a little bit about it. Welcome.
Thank you. I have Scott O'Dell, engineer with us. So it's about 67 acres, bounded by Triumph to the west and Vantage Point to the east. Zone urban residential is our understanding, in Cecil County right now, which allows approximately 10 units to the acre for apartments. Our plan was to have, we own a 300 unit apartment site in Middletown and about 400 unit site in Smyrna. Our plan was to do about between 300 and 400 units at this property. Within the Elkton limits. There were some concerns about the Dwyer property and environmental impacts. I have a report which I got. I apologize, I got it like 10 minutes before I had to come here, literally. So I only have 4 complete copies of it, but I can bring them up if you guys want to see it. But basically, he says that he doesn't think there's any impacts because it's not our property, because our property is uphill of the Dwyer site, and also the creek access somewhat of something in the area. But we would do more studies too, like we would actually have wells. There's no wells on our property. The EPA, we had a discussion with EPA about 2 weeks ago with Bob Wallace, and he had said that well, he never asked for a well on our property, and you can see like there's wells south of Torumo Medical that he had requested, so he didn't think there were any issues, but we would still be just careful and cautious along the perimeter closest to where Dwyer is, have some samples. We don't anticipate any issues, but I have the report if you want to see it.
So you would be asking, when you go in front of the county, or you're asking us for a petition of annexation, we get to that point, are you asking to come in as residential 3 R3?
Right.
And what's our capacity, Gene, with sewer and water? And I see the blue, or maybe do you know, or what's our recommendation?
There has to be improvements to the sewer line.
There has to, Mr. Bruno had engaged in services of KCI to take a look at the sewer conveyance. And there were some options there for making improvements to the conveyance system. So with respect to the water, that's a discussion that we should probably have about future additional sources of water, whether we're going to request additional draw from our wells from NVE or purchase options from Artesian. This particular property is technically in Artesian's franchise area. So they would be purchasing water from Artesian, but if Artesian is buying water from us to wheel it to the site through one of their interconnections, then we need to take a look at future allocations either from our current system or purchasing from Artesian, because we are pretty much at capacity with some of the pipeline projects. Granted, some of the pipeline projects have been dormant for years. Others are projecting way into the future as to what their demands will be. But we need to look to ensure that if we annex this, we have adequate water to provide.
Should we move this forward to the planning commission to take a look at it, or is it something you can look at in-house? Or
I think that with respect to the water capacity, it's something that we would have our engineers take a look at, Lucy and Brian. But also policy, how you want to proceed with future allocations for water.
because I love annexations. I love bringing in folks into the town, and we have control of what your project's gonna be, rather than not having control, and then we make, tax revenue based on, what you're wanting to bring to the table. I think our challenge in that area is the water capacity as we have through, several spots throughout our town. I don't think there's really too much really you can say to us, other than we need to get with KCI and find out if we can supply, well, I think the supply would have to come through Artesian, but Artesian's getting it through us. It's kind of a, have you spoke to Artesian at all?
I did. I talked to Adam Gould probably
Okay.
about a year or two ago, even more actually. He has infrastructure like right around the Tarumo medical site. You know, so that might be where it ends. He had asked the Maryland Department of Transportation, MDOT, about crossing underneath, like informally though, crossing underneath the road that connects 545 to 213, which is that 279?
279.
279, yeah. And they had expressed the willingness to allow that via directional board. There were some issues about that back and forth about whether you could cross 279, but he said that his discussions were positive in that regard. Then we could come up 545 and supply that, and he could supply that way. So he thought Artesian could supply. He also referenced, this goes back 2 or 3 years, but he also referenced like the ability to, there was some bigger system he was working on that would take water from some of their systems in Newcastle County. It sounded like maybe come down Elkton Road, like where the truck stops are. And so he would have water, Artesian would have water from that area as well, from those systems as well. So it wasn't just a localized system at that point, but I haven't talked to him.
Well, we have storage on the other side of Dogwood Road, correct?
Yes, right at the intersection of Maryland.
So there's definitely a water main heading out toward Walnut Hill. So it's figuring out how to get it over here. And of course, at Triumph Industrial Park, we have just that one connection. It goes
There's water up to Bradley, right at Brady,
up the
right
Brady.
now, and there's water across 279 because our pump stations on Blue Wall Road that pumps up to Walnut Hill and all that. So we do have water, and we supply WL4
Well, how do you,
water. So we have water over there. We don't need that.
how do you feel about this, Lou? What do you think?
I don't know. I think there has to be some serious analysis because when you have a water main there that's yet to supply water to Walnut Hill, we have some projects up there, including Vantage Point and all that. You can only get so much water and you run out. For
Could you-
existing, potentially existing property within the town, adding more would compromise, our water ability, our ability to get water for this.
And what Lou was saying, we have a current policy with the town is that we need to provide water for all of our the spots that are currently in town, which we do. So if we're looking at a site that was already in town, we would be able to provide it, but I'd love to have you. So let us take a look at some of our analysis and is time of the essence here, or do we have a little bit of time?
Yeah, no.
Give us a little bit of time and then we'll authorize KCI to look at our water flow and what we have up there. Because there is some land up there that I doubt will ever be built on, but yet we've got capacity for some of those sites up there. Does the board feel okay with that? No?
We gotta move forward.
Yeah.
We gotta start something.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm with you. I love that annexation. I mean, I see a potential customer partner here. We have to make sure we can,
supply it.
Are apartments the only thing that needs to be developed?
Oh, no, I mean, we develop other things too, but for this site, we were thinking given approximately 95 in the zone, you know, for the residential, you know, town location, apartments might go well, to be more viable. Would be the most viable alternative.
I think the county will probably approve the rezoning to an R3 before they would approve a zoning.
No, there's no rezoning required. It's currently zoned residential.
Oh, okay.
Isn't it? Is it multifamily residential?
Yeah, you can do apartments, townhouses.
Right. Currently zoned multifamily.
But no townhouses, no single family, strictly on about 400, 300 to 400.
Of apartments, one owner, and. I mean, I don't. For instance, because of the proximity to Triumph and there's actually a salvage yard across the street, I just thought with apartments where you were asking people to rent and not buy. You know, where we were taking the risk of ownership as opposed to someone else, that might be a better option. And apartments are in demand now too, so. They're needed, so.
There's a lot going to be built in the town over the next year, currently on the books. Now, I hate to use the word logistics center, but I don't think the county would allow you to have the zoning to a logistics center. They've already kind of put the halt on that. She said she's not going to allow any more warehousing, but you've got a great location for warehousing there, in my view. Right across the street from the industrial park. And
You know, we thought that, we kind of looked at that too, the grade is a little bit.
Grade's pretty steep where we can manage a little better with smaller buildings,
Okay.
apartments and things, larger warehouse buildings would be challenging.
well, listen, I would say this, let us take a look at our engineering and I think we could get back to you within a couple of weeks. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you guys so much. Looking forward to having you to town.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, Mr. Andy Rodriguez, come on down.
Have a seat, Andy.
All right, thank you.
Nothing changed.
Rose is not here yet. Oh, you will. Okay, I'd like to formally introduce to the mayor and the board the employee handbook. Want to thank the Lewis and the directors who worked on this project for quite a few months since the beginning of the year. I also want to mention that it's a evolving document. It's never going to be static. It's never going to be permanent. As laws do change, things change for the town, of course. Federal and state laws change, so we have to keep up with that. Part of the process was I did use a nice little software through Chesapeake Employee Insurance, employee handbook builder, that actually we were able to download that the old handbook into that builder, create a first draft, and then town administrative directors went policy by policy, double check the first draft, and then when we got to a point where we were ready, I also used Legit to do a final review, legal review to make sure we were on par. So the goal is to right now is to annually do a review. This is, I think, the first major update for many, many years. They've had some patches here and there from year to year. But this update was needed. At this point, though, I think regular reviews, formal reviews by the directors and the town administrator annually will to keep up with the changes that are going to be coming. For example, the PFMLA in Maryland was passed this past year, and our new handbook in 2025 is when that all becomes active, should reflect that information for our employees, and we may be required to disclose that for employees. Also, what I'll mention too is the employee handbook will be on digital format for the most part. Every department will have a hard copy. Of course, employees could request a hard copy, but the goal is to make it a little bit easier for the employees to access. And also, when we do make changes, to deliver those updates very quickly to the employees. And for example, we are in the midst of the implementation of the new payroll service. One of the nice features of that is we can upload employee documents to the service, to the payroll service, and the employees will be notified immediately when we have an updated document for them to access. So yeah, so we're very excited about this, and it's going to reduce costs on publishing too, as well as printing. So we're happy about that as well. Does the board have any questions?
The only comment, I was looking at the history of the town of Elkton, which I think is pretty good that you go over that with the employees when they come in, you get them to sign the book. But didn't make mention to the greatest mayor ever. So
Yes.
I'm a little confused with that.
Yeah, the town administrator asked me to admit that.
Oh, okay, very good. Well, he can't take, yeah, he's been under a few of us.
But if there's anything throughout the year that the board, the mayor, or the commissioners see in the handbook that needs to be reviewed, updated, reconsidered, please let us know. Be happy to do that. And that goes to all the employees and the town administrator and director. So
I appreciate it. I have to tell you, I have to look it over. It's a lot here and I really appreciate this because, you know, I'm just looking through the first few pages with some things. I see some things that I always wanted to know about and here it was right in my hands. And I think you're right. You can just change it by a page,
yes,
as the changes. So,
The handbook won't be a hard copy for employees.
this
It'll
will
be
be
online.
online.
So that's how they access it. And I compliment Andy for that suggestion because that way, if there's any change in federal or state law that affects the policy, we'll do it online. And then the employees will have access to it rather than shifting 100 and some pages around every time something changes. That was like an ancient way of doing it.
excuse me.
When you do make changes to the policy, do the employees have to re-sign?
Commissioner, that's a good question. So, in the handbook, it says that the town can make changes at any time. But in the future, again, we're in the middle of implementation of the new payroll service and resource information system. When we do update any of the policies, especially the handbook, the employees will get a notification and I'll have the ability to say, you need to acknowledge you received this update. So we'll actually be able to create a report that says, these are the employees that received it. So we will have that.
One of the things you talked about was making sure that we have access where the employees can go into an office. Remember we talked what the last meeting? We talked
Oh,
about-
that's like a workstation.
We need to make sure
Where they
that's
can
set
get
up.
their payroll information, or they can get their benefits information, or if they want to go, for example, with the group that came in last week, the Weiner Benefits Group. By the way, I want to thank the town administrator for signing that. We are going to start moving forward with Weiner. But you're right, we're going to look at, that's part of the plan. that we do.
Excellent.
Katie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, and you're doing a great job and please be careful getting down off that chair.
I will. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate your.
So like you guys are crazy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rob, you got that. Okay, I'll tell you next. Lou, you're up next with the
Yeah, a
town
couple quick,
administrator.
I just have a couple of things. Ordinance 4/2022. The board adopted the police pension plan back in 2010, 22 years ago. And we've amended it from time to time. The amendment that's facing the board today is basically the town provides for up to 36 months of credit for military service. Well, based on the council's advice, we've amended the ordinance to reflect to how that's calculated. One way it's calculated is by PD 214, and I'm sure that you and I know what that is. But believe it or not, there are other forms that are utilized by modern military organizations. So anyway, to make a long story short, this amendment allows for the computation of up to 36 months if they have that service, and that goes towards credit for retirement. And we've had, I don't think we've had any that have claimed that credit yet, but
No.
but we have people that are eligible to claim it if they want prior military. And this doesn't include the military service while you are an employee, because under federal law, that credit is automatically referenced. This is for pre-employment military service. And somebody's like me, for example, or.
So you just gained a couple more years.
Uh-huh.
Does that mean you
Well,
gained?
under Maryland, I'm under the Maryland retirement system, the only person in that system. You can get up, I got up to 3 years credit for being in the military. So anyway, that's what we're doing equivalent in this system too. And there's two other minor changes to retirement date, retirement. Retirement, normal retirement date and time. So that's all it is. So that's all been reviewed by council. So the board needs to accept this. I would ask the board to accept it for introduction.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept ordinance 4-2022, police pension plan, military service credit? Presented for introduction. Got a motion? Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The next item I have resolution RA 2022 under the Maryland, under the town's charter. The board has to declare a vehicle as surplus before they can be sold. And we have two vehicles that are declared, we're going to declare surplus: a 1999 Honda Accord and a 1998 Dodge Durango. I think these are used by law enforcement purposes, and they're no longer serviceable. Consequently, we'll take them down to Ritchie Brothers and sell them. And that's where we take all our vehicles, and we've got pretty good success that way. Believe it or not, there are people who like to buy old vehicles, and that's the best way to do it. We've been very successful in that.
It has been successful.
Yeah, a lot more. You know, days we used to advertise and we got squat. But nowadays, Richie, we get, sometimes we get a lot more money than you ever expect.
Yeah, we have a motion to approve resolution R8-2022. Second. And a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Earl, go down to Ritchie Brothers and bid on that. Honda Accord.
99 Honda. I would fit in. That's all.
Okay, I got a couple of things. We have a reappointment of a historic district commissioner, Paula Newton. I'd like to have a motion to reappoint her through August of 2025.
So moved.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I want to make the board aware we still have vacancy in the planning commission. Needs paperwork. Okay. Good. We have a motion, we have and we also have a member of the Board of Appeals, I think maybe two spots on the Board of Appeals and one on the Planning Commission. So if you got names, get them in. Sooner the better.
Get them into.
Get them into Gene to review or us to review, and then we'll make a motion, but
Applications online.
there's an
on
act,
our website, on our website. And the historic district commission, I'm sorry, they are also kind of like.
a couple of things on that also. So the planning commission is, and all of our boards are extremely important, but I always say that our planning commission probably puts in a lot of legwork. I mean, that every project comes in front of them, and they're the ones that mold our town. I mean, they're the ones that can if this annexation comes in, they can help mold that. Okay, these can't be this style apartment, or it has to be this. They have to put an elevator, you know how it works. You have a little bit more control once it gets to that level. But it's a very important position, and whoever you appoint has to take, I think, an online class now. So it's a little bit of like what they have to do. Okay, we had a proposal by Waste Management at our last meeting. Mr. Bean, along with Dan Hanley, came in and made a proposal to us about some changes. I think the key change that was brought up to us was going to a same day pickup. So our residents would have their trash and their recyclables picked up the same day. I can tell you, I spoke to quite a few people, and I heard no one say that they didn't like that. Within my circle. I think the other change was bulk pickup. Dan, give me the background of the bulk pickup again. There would be no bulk pickup unless they contacted you.
We shoot for like once a month, and we'll play that by ear, see what happens that way, so. We'll pick up what we look for the trash.
And to implement this, there would be a huge marketing campaign led by Waste Management, but we would have to help implement this also to make sure it would work. We met with the landlords after that. Earl was at the meeting, and so was Dan Hanley. And I thought the landlords took it pretty good, quite frankly. They felt that if we don't do things like this to keep our costs down, then they recognize that their costs are gonna go up. So I thought between that group and I'm okay with it. I think we can get behind it, but
I think we get too. I'm confused too about how, I know we're gonna, start this campaign and whatever, but what about the, I'm lost on that.
we haven't made a decision on the containers, have we?
Maybe the initial thing will be the 3 days a week pickup. That's what they said. In other words, the tentative date, we don't put down the plans of Monday, November 7th. Basically, you got 3 pickups. Basically, on Monday, Tuesday. That'd be the first step if you can, and then we'll go back out.
And I think what Gene was mentioning, we need to, in this marketing, we gotta make sure people put recycling on one of their cans, right? It has to say recycling along with your regular trash, and then what decision are we gonna make to provide cans to people if they want them? I think is,
Wasn't the idea that all these cans, they pick them up?
We get to that point, yeah, basically, you control the trash days first, and then eventually you get to do the cans inside.
Okay, so it's like phase it in a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be the first thing.
Because the cans that they pick up, they're rather large.
Yeah.
I was riding through, the heights of road and looking at how many people put out one little bag of trash or one, and there's other people, like, how are they supposed to remember these big cans? But that's something we have to consider. I might be able to give them one for free, but how are they gonna handle it? I just, I didn't know if there was different sizes or, all those big.
The standard size that wheels on them.
Yeah,
Big
they are
or
big.
And a lot of people have their own,
Yeah, I've got,
but will they be able to keep that, or do we have to go to waste management product?
Eventually, we're gonna waste that product, that's what we like to do, I guess, to see uniform cans. Makes everything neat and tidy, makes it uniform.
Yeah, it does, it does.
Right.
And
You
then,
get different cans, and it becomes with the side loaders and that, being that with the. Same growing pains will have here, I think, Spur and Delaware have the exact same situation. We're trying to talk with them, see if they want this.
Imagine. That's good. Thank you.
I'm all for, buying, making the change, but I still have the concerns about cans being on the streets. I mean, uniformity, whatever. I mean, it's just hard to get people to do things the right way, let alone just throw the cans out there and go home. And then, go to work and come back, expect to be in the same spot. I have concerns with that. Only concern that I have with this spot. So,
and you live on Earl lives on a busy road, and it makes sense that if those cans could be on the sidewalks and then they pick them up off the sidewalk and back in, then we're blocking the sidewalk. I mean, then we're blocking the road up. It's a juggle there. But I would say I think it's progress if we move forward with some, at least we can get behind a marketing plan here. And I know it's not going to be perfect. And I think that when they put this out on bid, we can, I think with next year, we tell them to incorporate containers for everybody in the bid and see how that works out, right? I think that's their game plan.
Yes.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Who is going to finance the marketing project?
I believe they're financing
Yeah,
it.
waste management provide the
100%.
material, they'll provide the material. And then also just, social media and things like that. We'll put like a couple of things in the legal things down in the month, but that's kind of it, a lot of it.
And we may go door to door. Maybe we'll put something where we can go door to door in every residence and drop off a flyer. I think we can do that.
But nobody growing pains, we very accepted that.
But it's terrible now. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
and what was the reason why they didn't pick up trash yesterday?
Yes, all right, well, this is a great example. What happened is they had a call out on Monday, and what happens is people have to do it in 2 days. It's like, if you ever see the First People Buffet commercial, we got like 12 bowls a day and 13 cats, this whole bouncing around. And what happens is it affects everything down the line. That's what happens, because we lost the driver, had to get a substitute in there, but he knows what's going on with it. So, kind of wrap our hands around to see what's what. Now by going to 3 days a week instead of 2, it's even responsible for 2,200. Responsible for about 60 votes, that's a lot more manageable, and a smaller number of things. That's what happens, you can call out or something. But yeah. Something to say. They need to address it, they call it up, we send it back out to the.
All right.
You can call it, Jim.
Well, I guess let's get the ball rolling. CGI Communications presentation that was, with us, and that was, the website folks. I think that I'd like to, put someone on a committee to meet with them. I think it's, everything that they want to do is wonderful. It's no cost to the town. But I think maybe we can put, Kathleen or Michelle in touch with them, and kind of put that process working, because it's the only concern I had was when they go out and start selling ads, I want to make sure that we lead them to the people that we want to sell the ads to. I just don't want, I know it sounds bad, but there's certain, segments we may or may not want,
To endorse.
and that's what we're basically doing. We're endorsing those businesses. Is the board okay with that? Let's see the project, or did you not like it?
No,
Like Kathleen, you're in charge.
thank you so much.
All right. I don't have anything. I think, last week we were talking about a lot of different things. So we were pretty busy. All I can say is there's a lot of action continuing going on, in the town of Elkton and our county. And, I'm going to go this evening. There's a economic development meeting, at Mako. I've never gone to a Mako event for the counties, but I'm going to go tonight. And it's, I think one of the projects that's going to be talked about is Southfields in general, at a county level with the whole state of Maryland. So I'm going to shoot down, and be there for the 7 to 9 o'clock meeting tonight and see what it brings. I mean, it's all good. What's that? It's a county economic development in general, just talking about projects and,
Throughout,
yeah, throughout the
they're
county.
bringing one.
They're not bringing me in,
Not, I know.
but they're gonna talk about Breakwolf Lodge. They're gonna talk about positive things, right? And, I'm gonna go there and see what it's all about and do the robbery, right? And find get called on. But other than that, Rob, do you have anything to report?
I skipped my report last meeting because we were running late, but I just wanted to mention that the VFW tournament was well attended. The VFW does a lot for and with the town, so I like to support them. National Night Out was also very well attended, another great success. Congratulations, Chief and FOD. Wayne Johnson from Woodlands Campgrounds, where we have the Memorial Day event. He asked me to deliver a 9/11 speech there, on the morning of 9/11 at 8:30 in the morning. And he asked me to invite everybody to come to the campgrounds for that presentation. And Rob, as we talked about, you were at the Rotary meeting Monday night, and Rotary has asked me to propose to the town that we post signage on the major roads leading into town. And we did touch on that. Have you got anything to say about that?
No, I think that the Rotary is a great service organization throughout, our community. They're more active now than they've been in years past. And, they would like, if we ever do our, not necessarily our wayfinding signs, but entering into Elkton signs. And there's a couple locations that I actually brought up. I know that in the Southfields project, there's a commitment to put a entering Elkton sign coming from Chesapeake City into Elkton right there at the corner of Frenchtown and 213. And then there was also discussion, it seems like Mike Brown's involved in everything here. But there was other discussion about putting a welcome to Elkton sign on the corner of the traffic circle and Patriots Glen on the high corner there. And that would be our second location that, and what the Rotary does is they'll put their seal. Same thing as the Lions Club. does when you go into communities. And if you have digital signs, that can flash up a lot better than having the actual insignia. But what I'd mentioned to Rob in the Rotary group, that I don't see any reason why they couldn't put a Rotary sign down at Meadow Park on our screen that says meetings, the meeting date. I mean, that's what that board is for, correct? Am I correct or wrong? Right? So I don't, Lou, do we need to take any action for them to put a sign, or should they just?
We own that.
Excuse me?
We don't have an issue there because we own that.
Yeah, so
they
we'll
can
just
put
get
a
them to
sign
run
that
through
goes
Mary.
up
Get-
there.
Hey, Rob, so
That's outside the right of way.
have whatever's gonna be designed and take it to Mary, and she'll get with Dan to get it up.
Guess I need to check on the dimensions first.
Yeah, whatever type of sign they want, but I know what they specified was they wanted to have the Rotary symbol or emblem, and then meetings the first Monday of every month to try to draw additional attention to the Rotary.
Okay.
Maybe it just could be a banner for now.
Do that. I'd be happy to make one.
All right.
Whatever we did, whatever.
Like membership going.
Yeah, I think so. I think Rob might have some more.
No, I'm all done.
Good, you nothing? Gene?
The only thing, Gene, when is the planning commission gonna start covering? I had.
We're gonna begin that any day now, and we'll start in the planning department first.
How long will it be there until it reaches?
I couldn't tell you. exactly.
Yes.
No, I was, anticipating engaging the services of a consultant to assist us with that, and was having trouble getting consultants to respond, I guess, because they're so busy. I did get a couple of names, one from, actually from Amy DePietro at MRA. She had, said that there was a comprehensive plan that was just finished in Havre Grace, and she had recommended this one firm. And there was another firm that finished the one in, Pebble Beach. And I was going to reach out to them to see the cost to have them help us, through the process.
Okay, good. I mean, we need to, we're going to get on that. We need.
Yeah.
That's part of what we discussed earlier about that. And what we have available, water, sewer, water. Has to be.
I know that Northeast hired a consultant to just do their water and sewer capital. To focus on that, so I reached out to Betsy to ask her which consultant they use.
And the,
And so it might be,
I think so. Yeah, I think that'd be a good move.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, this is the time we open up the floor for the public to have anything for the good of the town. But first, I'd like to say, we got Matt Hubbard from the Cecil League. Matt's been coming to a couple of our meetings, and thank you, Matt, because we went many, we're going many years there without any representation, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to join.
Yeah, so you want to tell the board a little bit about yourself, or am I putting you on the spot?
Oh, no, this is great.
Huh?
No, yes, I'm Matt Hubbard. I'm the new Elkton and Cecil County government beat reporter. So I do everything in government that is countywide and the beat of Elkton. So if anybody has anything interesting, the big thing I'm working on right now is PFAS in the water. And talking about the lawsuits that are going on with that. And waste management as well. That's a really big one. So anything else you guys can think of, an email. I don't have to get started. Didn't start just yet. So there's a probation.
You gotta be there a year. But as I've always said in the past, I learned my lesson many years ago, and I would say that our media is our friend, and open and transparent is the best way to be. And there's nothing. We just want to get the message out because it's good for all of us to know. And I appreciate you being here because I've already seen a couple articles. Today's article was fantastic.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
So we have Ed Lineweaver, who acquired the Colowingo power property right behind Chris's Foreign Cars. If anyone's gone by there, you can see all the improvements that he's done. He's taken that eyesore site. He's already re-blacktopped it. He's sealed it. And it's already wonderful. And then his mission is he's creating, he wants to get more town residents involved in his employment for him and really work with them help them. I mean, it's a really good story he has there, and I think he's gonna do a good job. Anyone else have anything for the town of Elkton? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Oh,
That was me.
all right, Pat, you're on.
Okay, I just had a couple questions about the recycling. There seems to be a lot of information that conflicts. Like if I use a jar of, say, Ragu spaghetti sauce, do I have to wash that jar out to put it into the recycling?
Yes. Yes, if not, it's contaminated.
Okay, that's what I thought.
If you have
So
a
that-
pizza box, with crust in it, it's contaminated.
Okay,
If you have a milk jug and you have the cap on it, it's contaminated.
but does that milk jug have to be washed out?
Yes,
So anything you put in the recycling center needs to be washed.
clean, yeah.
Okay.
And that's something I think we'll stress in our marketing, because my wife we didn't know it.
Well, I think a lot of people are confused by what they can just toss in there.
I agree with you. 100%. Anything else, Pat?
Well, just the other thing, because I use a lot of it, like for cardboard recycling. I use a lot of Stouffer's frozen meals because I don't like to cook. The box that they come in, is that recyclable? Is that considered cardboard or is it just trash?
The outside box is okay, the inside you cook with is not.
Okay,
You got it?
I got it.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay, thank you for listening.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, guys.